Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and a very warm welcome to the Blavatnik School of Government here in Jericho in Oxford. And thanks for being here and being part of OxLEP's annual event. My name is Howard Bentham, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so, as we begin by taking a brief look back over our shoulders at the Oxfordshire economy in 2018-19, with the focus on the role OxLEP plays in supporting the incredible business community we have in the county. Then we shall very much be facing forward as we launch the all-important Oxfordshire Local Industrial Strategy, with a view on our direction of economic travel for the coming years. We're going to hear from the Chief Executive of OxLEP, Nigel Tipple, Ahmed Goga, Director of Strategy, Dr Gordon Sanghera, Chief Executive Officer from Oxford Nanopore Technologies, who will detail how Oxfordshire's innovation ecosystem has played its part in his company's success story. This will be followed by Sarah Haywood from Advanced Oxford, who will talk up the importance of mobilising business leadership. And finally, the chair of OxLEP, Jeremy Long, will wrap up matters focusing on how and why businesses should back the Oxfordshire Local Industrial Strategy. Sadly, no ministerial attendance here today. We were hoping the Business Secretary, Andrea Leadsom, was going to be with us at the annual event, but I believe they were on the night shift last night, and I think some might be nursing some bruises this morning. After that, we should have some time to put some questions to our panel sitting in front of me. It's rather like Britain's Got Talent, the way that the four of you are there. So we should have some questions from the floor and from the media. And then we'll finish this section of the event. Then we'll return to the Inamori Forum for refreshments until 11 o'clock. OxLEP's role in the wider economy of the county can be summed up in three words: inspiration, collaboration, and delivery. We have a unique position in the UK and indeed globally to drive opportunities for economic prosperity here in Oxfordshire. OxLEP has inspired business people across generations. A stat of which we're particularly proud is the 1,500 plus young people inspired by Careers Fest, which is now in its 10th year. I'm sure we can all remember embarking on our personal journeys into the world of work and not having the foggiest of what the future was going to hold, or indeed what we were going to do. OxLEP has helped so many young people take that leap of faith, supported them fully in that process too. And these people are, after all, the lifeblood of our economy. Collaboration is key, getting business leaders, stakeholders, politicians, educationalists and partners to talk and to find a common area for future development, and where that's possible is absolutely vital. By coming together, businesses also spread the word about Oxfordshire. An important message to take from today is a call to action for businesses to engage. Another ear-catching statistic is that over 300 businesses did exactly that, collaborated in producing the local industrial strategy, which we'll hear in detail later. And finally, delivery is paramount. As a local enterprise partnership with our partners, we've now secured over £650 million worth of government or European investment in the county, with many programmes where we have secured investment being delivered during 2018-19. And all this leads us to the vital local industrial strategy. Our local industrial strategy directly responds to the UK industrial strategy launched by the government in November 2017, which aims to increase growth and productivity across the county and across the country and create more prosperous communities. It's ambitious and positions Oxfordshire as one of the top 3 global innovation ecosystems, highlighting our world-leading science and technology cluster. This will also provide an ambitious long-term vision for economic growth between now and 2040. The strategy provides a business-led framework detailing how we can realise our full potential, raising productivity and commercialisation of our unique innovation assets, working directly alongside and feeding into other key Oxfordshire strategies, including the Oxfordshire Housing and Growth Deal. It is trailblazing. Ideas, products and service innovation can create jobs across the country, reinforcing Oxfordshire's position as a net contributor to the UK. Oxfordshire is truly the UK's innovation engine. No other parts of the UK has the breadth and depth of assets, knowledge, capability, skills and business capacity, making Oxfordshire a leading location for investment in the UK. So shout it from the rooftops. invest in Oxfordshire, deliver for the UK. What we do in the county directly influences government economic policy. How important will that be post-Brexit, especially after last night's instalment of our political soap opera? We're truly the gateway to global markets, but never forgetting what we do locally is utterly crucial to what directly happens on the ground right here in Oxfordshire. So enough from me. Let's get our first key speaker up to the stage. He spearheaded the bid for the Oxford and Oxfordshire City deal, the EU Structural and Investment Fund and Strategic Economic Plans submissions, and is assisting the county's businesses into a period of exceptional growth. He's got over 20 years' experience in the formation, development, operation and management of organisations across both the public sector as well as the private sector. He joined OxLEP in June 2013. He's made his mark with energetic, passionate and inspirational leadership, and he's going to give us a review of the economic activity in Oxfordshire in 2018-19. Please put your hands together and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Executive of OxLEP, Nigel Tipple.
Thanks very much, Howard. I'm not quite sure how I follow that. He's probably taken most of Ahmed's, most of mine, and Jeremy's summary and put it into the first 10 minutes, which is actually really good. What I'll do is just dive into a little bit more detail of some of that economic context, some of the environment within which we're both blessed in terms of a county, but also is quite challenging in terms of driving and continuing to drive that economic growth. And we have been very successful. We have some very significant assets, the ones that are up there on the screen you know very well, but they're just a few of those critical areas of opportunity. We've got science parks, business parks, the Milton Parks of this world. We've got Begbrook. We've got a range of science park included that are really beginning to drive that transformational change, creating the facilities, creating the opportunity for our businesses to grow, our SMEs to turn into medium-sized companies and grow beyond medium to large. That scale-up journey is really important. And alongside that, as Howard touched on, we're not just doing this for a kind of a UK PLC context. It's also about the communities, the people who live here. We've got to remember that they're the ones who need to benefit from this most. And we need to help them on that journey. That's why skills is so critical. And I'll touch on that in a second. In terms of our economic performance, it goes without saying, we have a very strong economy. For an environment that's circa 700,000 population, a £23 billion a year GVA return is quite significant. What you don't see there is what underpins that. That's 3.9% growth per annum on average for the last 10 years. So think back to recession. We've continued to grow. We've had a strong economic performance. That's underpinned by 31,000 SME VAT registered businesses, a very significant cohort of business activity that are innovating, that are growing, that are developing, creating employment for local communities, creating the products, the services and the business opportunities that UK PLC needs now, and even more so later this year. We need to continue to trade. We already trade globally. That jobs figure, again, underpins that growth. 50,000 net new jobs over that period of time is significant, and that's been tracking steadily. We've had a couple of kind of years where it's blipped, it's gone up a little bit and dropped again, but it averages round about that 8,000 mark per annum. Real jobs, real communities, real people. And that we've got to continue to support. And that's why the integration of what we do through local industrial strategy that Ahmed will touch on, the work on the Oxfordshire 2050 plan with our local authority colleagues leading, and indeed the infrastructure are all critical. They can't just be done in isolation. We need the people and the communities to have access to the quality jobs, the businesses to be able to have the right skills they need, and the environment to be conducive to growing and living and working in that area. So again, really significant growth, and our survival rate, again, tops the UK in terms of that 5-year survival rate of businesses starting here. Some of that's because of the ecosystem, some of it's because of the partnerships and collaborations that exist, but a lot of it's about having the right ingredients. It's about having the right routes to market, the right support through that journey, and indeed the right skills. And we can still attract and continue to attract high quality, skilled workforce, and also start to develop our own. And Howard touched on those key points, inspiration. We've sought to be much more on the front foot over the last couple of years, going out and talking to people about what the value of Oxfordshire is as a place, as part of its role in the UK in terms of a strong economy, and indeed its global reach. And when you talk about the Oxford-Cambridge arc, the two propositions that are globally significant in there at the moment, obviously Oxford and Cambridge, but it's how do we benefit the whole of that community. Some of that's about us being strong on the front foot, demonstrating capability. Working with senior business leaders, our House of Commons events have been very popular. Importantly, we've showcased the businesses that exist in Oxfordshire. That's not just about us selling the sizzle, as it were. We've gone out there and we've taken the businesses with us, and they've been the ones communicating to that audience. And their investors, their businesses, their sovereign wealth funds, their institutions who are looking at Oxford and Oxfordshire as a place to invest. And we've also continued with our Q&As more locally. And certainly those have inspired a lot of people to challenge us, to ask us about how things work, how are they going to engage, what's the consultation process, how can they support that growth. And in some cases, it's about us challenging them to work with us. So we'll continue those Q&As and we'll continue to communicate with businesses across the whole kind of ecosystem. And particularly thinking about capability, not just sector. What are the skills, what are the attributes, how do they relate to other things? So how does Formula One and the medical sector work together? How do we translate some of that technology into new areas, space and satellite, computing, etc. And we talked earlier, Howard mentioned it, Careers Fest, just as one example. That 1,500 plus young people and parents, because it's important that we get some of the parents over the line there as well. They're the ones that are going to be our future workforce. We've got to inspire them. Many young people don't know what's on their doorstep. They don't know what's available. They don't know the courses that are available through school, through sixth form, college, and then into higher education. The apprenticeship route is another critical one, where we can build the skills we need for a future economy. So really significant activity over the last 12 months, building on the previous years and heading forward. Collaboration's probably overused and undervalued in a lot of ways in terms of all the partners, in terms of how we work. As a local enterprise partnership, we're only as good as the partners around us and how they work with us. We can spend a lot of time championing things, but if we can't deliver on the ground, if we can't hit the ground running, then we're not going to be able to continue that successful pipeline of investment coming into the county. So collaboration's really important. Working with the schools and businesses to create the right kind of environment to inspire our young people. That 5,500 young people going through work experience is something that the schools, without that support, without our team helping them to position that, would find it very difficult. So we're only a small part of that journey, but we just help the young people to understand how to get a work placement, how the businesses can engage with them, and transition some of those opportunities. In some cases, those young people come back to those businesses in future years. And I'm aware of some that have gone on to be apprentices in those businesses and then gone on beyond apprenticeship. So there's a real value in continuing that work and continuing the collaboration. Again, we talk there about the kind of new technologies, low carbon impact, clean growth. They're all things that Ahmed will talk about in terms of local industrial strategy, but they're real now. We've got businesses who are expert in those areas already delivering for UK PLC. Let's build on that. And again, thinking about business and innovation, we've got resources there and a team dedicated through our Growth Hub to help support the growth of businesses, whether you're thinking about starting a business, whether you're running and consolidating, whether you're growing, or whether you've got a really significant scale-up ambition. It's not a one-stop shop for everything, but we can direct you into the routes. We can provide you with a baseline to move on. We can give you that advice and support, and then we can work with you and others to collaborate to grow that business. So again, it's about knowing where businesses want to go, helping them on that journey. Again, we touched on earlier in the kind of opening remarks, delivery. If we don't continue to deliver, we won't have the confidence of government, and that's going to be critical post-Brexit, particularly. Whatever the government is, whatever the kind of outcomes are from last night, we will continue to support businesses irrespective. We've got to help them on that journey. We've got to take them through. And examples of investment there, the interesting shot there with the walking across the crossing there, but the bio-escalator, just one example of investment that we've jointly worked on with the university. And then we've got a livestock technology centre that we've worked on with an FE establishment with the colleges. So again, different types of intervention, all equally important in terms of our ecosystem, and really starting to create the conditions and the resources to help that journey. And again, apprenticeship schemes, the best ambassadors for those apprenticeship schemes are the apprentices themselves. It's not just me turning up and talking about apprenticeships, even though I did one many, many years ago. It's real when you've got someone who stood up there. Leona in our team has gone through her apprenticeship, she's almost finished, but her experience is far more impactful in a school environment or indeed in a business environment than mine is. And using those apprentice ambassadors, working with the businesses that host them to really push that message out is really critical for us all. And continuing to work in partnership, it's a we, not an I. Everything we do is in partnership. There are times when we have to promote in a particular way to ensure that we get the resources, but actually it's a team effort. It's not just one of us. And again, if you look at the kind of why have we been doing that work, why have we been pushing those messages out, it's because we've got the breadth of opportunity to exploit. We've got everything from high technology through to a visitor economy that's very robust and contributes over £2 billion a year to our economy. Very significant investment into an area, very significant opportunities. Creative and digital, heritage, culture, equally as important to us as those technology sectors, engineering, or any of the transformative technologies, whether that's quantum or space and satellites and the like. And again, if you look at those, very significant opportunity to grow the economy. That 180 billion across the UK is an opportunity for us to take a slice of that and to bring that into Oxfordshire and to capitalise on it. But actually, we're as much of an ambassador for that sector as we are receiving investment. So we've got our job to play in a national stage as well as a local one. And continue to nurture that investment. Oxford-Cambridge ARC, I could spend hours telling you about different aspects of that. The critical bit for me is there's a strong collaboration across the 4 local enterprise partnerships in that area, the 30 local authorities, the mayoral combined authority, and we are working together on shared priorities. For me, that's important that we're on the front foot, not on the back foot. So we're an active partner in that, we're driving that process forward, and we'll continue to do so. And finally, and by no means least, skills. We have a new programme. We're kind of officially launching that as well today, although the programme, as you'll see from any of the interaction with the team out there, is already live. But that's about working with business and looking at the skills that they need as an SME to help them on their journey and to grow and to think about things like apprenticeships and engagement. And as you can see up there, working with training providers, starting to identify what are the skills that you need, how can we support you on that journey moving forward. So it's been a busy year. We've continued to grow in terms of our impact. Despite all the political uncertainty, we've been able to keep moving. We responded recently to a fiscal event, or potential fiscal event, whether it happens or not, we're not sure. But we were asked with 5 days' notice to turn an investment programme round, and the team did that. We have 5 days to get back into government, a full business case-led proposal. We don't know where it'll go. We're not quite sure whether any investment will come. What it demonstrated was that the team, working with the partners, can turn things around quickly and respond to government. We'll see. There might be some announcements on that in days and weeks to come, but maybe not. So I'll leave it there, Howard, and we'll hand over to Ahmed.
Our next key speaker is a brilliant communicator and business leader with a strong track record in strategy development, service delivery and operational management in the public and private sector. He's got over 20 years leadership experience in various senior management team and board level roles in London, Bristol, Worcestershire, Gloucestershire, and he's now helping drive Oxfordshire forward. To launch the Oxfordshire Local Industrial Strategy, please welcome OxLEP's Director of Strategy, Ahmed Goga.
I'm a bit worried about that build-up, Howard. Good morning, friends. Let me start with something that has been something truly inspiring for me throughout my career, and it's something I think that's relevant for us to reflect on as Oxfordshire as we launch the industrial strategy today. Marcus Garvey was one of the leading advocates for civil rights in the United States, predated Dr. King. And he talked at length about the importance of belief and of confidence in what you do and what you aspire to achieve. And I think the term confidence is something we should hold tight to as we move forward and also start to stretch out our legs and run the Oxfordshire Local Industrial Strategy into something that it has the potential to be. He said that if you don't have confidence in yourself, you are twice defeated in the race of life. He said, with confidence, you will win even before you have started. Now, that is something that we should reflect on, because one of the things Oxfordshire seems to have a difficulty with sometimes is confidence. We seem to be a bit shy about what we are about, shy about what we can achieve, and shy about what we are doing for the country. And I think that's something that we should start to move out of and embrace as we take forward the ambitions that we've set out in the local industrial strategy. Oxfordshire is a brilliant place. Its assets and its capability are unique, and the LIS seeks to embrace those and takes forward those in a new ambitious direction as well. There are three very important themes that are built into the LIS, which I'll touch on shortly, but it's worth sharing those at the beginning. First of all, ambition. We need to, and we will be demonstrating in everything we do, the ambition to lead and the ambition to strive to succeed even more for Oxfordshire's communities, Oxfordshire's businesses, and for the country as well. Second thing is leadership. And it is very important in this current time that business shows its leadership in taking forward the wonderful opportunities that it is creating and offer those to as wide an audience as possible. Their voice matters, and we need to make sure that it is heard. And then finally, it is getting connected. We need to reconnect with communities in Oxfordshire. We need to reconnect with innovators and entrepreneurs. We need to show that if they want to achieve things, this is the place to come. And that's why we want to make sure that Oxfordshire is known as the playground for innovators. It is the location of choice for entrepreneurs to translate big ideas into fantastic, world-beating and successful products and services. And also, finally, we want to make sure that Oxfordshire is known as the pioneer for clean and sustainable growth that delivers flourishing communities as well. All of those things are essential and are featured in the local industrial strategy. Our vision for Oxfordshire, as has been touched on earlier, is to position Oxfordshire as one of the top 3 global innovation ecosystems in the world, and also to make sure that we are the pioneer for these new exciting technologies that are coming through, in which we are leading and innovating here in Oxfordshire as well. The LIS is built on 3 very important guiding principles as well. First and foremost, that by investing in Oxfordshire, you deliver for the United Kingdom. Businesses throughout the county are delivering manufacturing and supply chain opportunities the length and breadth of this country, creating jobs for communities as far as the Welsh valleys and also into Ireland and Northern Ireland, into Scotland, in the Midlands and industrial heartlands of West Midlands and the Northwest as well. Oxfordshire's innovation delivers for the country, and continue to invest in it is absolutely essential to UK PLC in these challenging economic times. Secondly, the guiding principles absolutely underpins our position as the UK's innovation engine. There is no other place in the country that has the breadth, depth, and brilliance of knowledge, skills, and capability that Oxfordshire possesses. And we need to make sure that that is effectively communicated and promoted and understood, and also to use it, the basis, to encourage and attract more of that brilliance into our county. And then finally, it's very important to emphasise that Oxfordshire is a global location. We attract over 30 million visitors a year, and much of that is international visits from emerging markets, established markets, and also growing markets as well. And also our sectors and our technologies that are leading the way in markets are also global in their nature, not just British or European. And so the reach out to the rest of the world is absolutely critical for the country moving forward. Those are very important guiding principles that sit behind the LIS. The LIS itself has been a heavy 12-month process of making and developing the strategy with extensive consultations. It's actually made up of 4 documents, including an economic baseline that sets out the evidence base that supports the ambitions, supported by a future state assessment that looks at the technologies and the markets that we have the potential to succeed in, and also looks at the competing ecosystems that we are right now competing with, but also the challenger areas that are also eating away at our competition as well. And also encompasses then the strategy document that we're launching today, and it will be followed by an investment prospectus and delivery plan that will set out how we will translate those ambitions as well. And all of that is underpinned by an extensive, well-developed process of consultation and close working. The LIS has been jointly developed with government. It's jointly branded with government, and it's got the full endorsement of the government as well. Although the Secretary of State who signed it is no longer a Conservative cabinet minister, let alone a Conservative. But let's not dwell on that. But Greg was hugely supportive of the process and has been a huge advocate for Oxfordshire throughout the time he was a minister as well, and will continue to be so as well. It's also important to emphasise that this has been fully developed with the business community, with civic leaders, with political leaders and institutions as well. We've been wide and reaching in our discussions across the board in making sure that what we have is Oxfordshire's local industrial strategy. And also we've looked at areas that we are competing with, areas that we need to be mindful of, areas that are going to be taking market share from us if we rest on our laurels as well. So it looks at that global angle as well. The economy of Oxfordshire, as you have been briefed and seen earlier, is a dynamic one. And you've seen the numbers here, and it's worth dwelling on what Nigel mentioned earlier. Nearly 4% growth for over 10 years. That is into and out of recession. We haven't missed a beat. And that illustrates the strength and power and resilience of what Oxfordshire is able to do. But it also raises the questions around our dynamism and how much we will need to do more to continue to have that position moving forward. And that's illustrated by some of these challenges that we now face as well, including the big issue around very expensive housing that's putting a strain on businesses' ability to recruit as well, and we'll touch on a bit about that. But also worth reflecting that in terms of our digital technology, it is still underdeveloped compared to our international competitors. We have amongst the best full fibre connectivity in the country, believe it or not, at somewhere near 7%. Only very good if you look from an England point of view, but if you look internationally, Scandinavia is at 80% and other parts of the Far East are pushing 90%. We are dreadful if we are competing at an international level in recognising our digital spine needs updating, and it's a key priority that we need to work on with partners and government to make sure is resolved. There's also an issue about demography. As you'll see, we have an ageing society. Oxfordshire's workforce is aging quicker than anywhere else in the country as well. And it's something we need to be thinking about in terms of how we make the workforce more agile, flexible, in light of some of those challenges that we have. So the LIS has been looking at all of these issues. There are 8 takeaways that we have identified that sit behind the strategy and the market analysis. Is something that you should think about in the tome of evidence that's been produced. First and foremost, the economy is growing, as I've mentioned before, and we're outstripping everywhere else. But also, critically, our ability to lead and compete is wholly dependent on our ability to have a highly developed and highly talented workforce, and having access to that workforce as well. Without that, we cannot succeed and we cannot continue to flourish. And it is absolutely fundamental to our ability to compete internationally as well. We are world leaders in technologies that are emerging and have the opportunity to secure UK market share across the board with the right investment and with the right support for business as well. But there are other issues that we have to consider. The challenge around the access to and the ability to have high quality, flexible space, whether it's A-grade office space, whether it's lab or wet lab space, is incredibly challenging with very much constraints on innovation space available inside Oxfordshire. A startling statistic for you, I'm trying to see where Jim is, I can't see him at the moment, but in Oxford, for example, right now there is 10,000 metres square feet available of wet lab space currently on the market. That sounds very good until I tell you that in Boston, it's 15 million square foot. And that gives you the idea of the constraints and the challenges we are facing and the need for action and need for urgency as well. And we also got some other issues as well. I've talked about the productivity of our workforce. We have a shrinking workforce in terms of demography, but that doesn't mean that we are utilizing the assets as effectively as we could. Are we thinking about bringing into play more effective ways in which we can support people to continue working? What measures have we put in place to ensure that brilliant armed services that we have in our county, when they transition into civilian life, use their leadership skills and their capabilities in the armed services and then come into our businesses and retain that skill set here in Oxfordshire? Those are things we should be thinking about and doing better and improving as well. And most striking of all is that by standing still and doing nothing, we will go backwards. Areas like Quantum Valley in Canada, the Far East in Singapore and Shanghai, emerging markets in India and others are already investing significantly in major new technologies, which we are currently leading in. If we don't continue and accelerate that investment, we will fall behind and we will lose that leadership opportunity. So it's important that we continue to develop our presence. Housing continues to be an absolute big issue for us. The Oxfordshire housing market is the least affordable in the whole of the country. The average price at the moment in terms of earnings to affordability ratio is 17:1 in some parts of Oxford City, and the average for the whole of the county is over 12:1. That is just simply not sustainable. It is simply not going to be practicable for moving force. Businesses have a role to play in thinking about this issue. It is not entirely down to local authorities to fix it and to solve it. Yes, they are the planning authority, but they need help and support from everyone in solving that issue. And we need to think in a creative new way about how we start to tackle those matters. And business does have a role to play. Finally, the analysis highlights the absolute criticality of the need to have an integrated approach to our physical, digital, business, finance, and talent ecosystem. It is no point trying to fix one thing on its own without looking at all of the others. They are highly integrated, they are highly interdependent, and without resolving those interdependencies, we will fall behind as well. So sobering stuff, that has led to the development of the LIS itself and the proposals that encompass over 20 policy interventions built around 5 foundations of productivity, around ideas, people, infrastructure, business, environment and places. And you have that summarized in the brief document you've got in front of you as well. And we'll be happy to talk about those in more detail in the atrium outside later on as well. But what I want to do is highlight a couple of things. The LIS is prioritizing these key outputs with a commitment to deliver and double the Oxfordshire economy to over 46 billion, and also to deliver 2% growth per annum in productivity, hoping to deliver, as a result, 808,000 net private sector jobs as well. But I think there are 3 things that sit within the LIS that I'd like to spend a few minutes sharing with you, and they're underlying themes that I touched on earlier around ambition, leadership, and getting connected. And it's worth us thinking about these when you leave this auditorium, about how you can get involved in that. First of all, it's about really driving forward the Oxfordshire innovation ecosystem. The issue I mentioned before about confidence is highly relevant here. We need to think afresh about how we project Oxfordshire's presence on the global stage. We need to think about how we are communicating ourselves to markets and also how we present ourselves to investors and to innovators as well. One of the things that we will be looking to do through the LIS is very much to address this issue about the Oxfordshire brand, to look beyond the brilliance of the university and our education system, but to bring into play the brilliance of our business community, the sectors that we're leading on, and the place that's Oxfordshire as well, and highlighting its wonderful beauty and its heritage and its culture as well, which often gets lost in our overall presentation of Oxfordshire as a place to come, visit and invest. We'll be making a number of interventions on this, including developing new campaigns around our brand, but also looking at developing new forms of connectivity to other global innovation ecosystems to show, share, and promote talent, ideas, and knowledge as well. And we want businesses and all our partners to get on board on that campaign as well, to look at how you can sit behind that, and to look at how you, within your areas, can also start to promote Oxfordshire in that truly international leading way. We want to connect different parts of the county effectively together, and we want to highlight how Oxfordshire as a place is the only location businesses should be thinking about investing in and retaining and attracting people to come here. And that's a role that everyone can play together in this process. The second thing I think is about leadership, and this is really important, I think, for all of us here and to reflect on in this process moving forward. We need to think about how we connect local people into this brilliant global innovation ecosystem that we are describing here. There's too much of a gap, particularly between young people and what is being achieved here in Oxfordshire and what we aspire to do. If I say to you that Oxfordshire's education system is underperforming, you might be surprised, bearing in mind the hallowed halls within which we are at the moment. But actually, in every aspect of education, the system is not performing. We are underperforming in terms of Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4. We are underperforming to English averages in GCSEs and A-level performances. The outputs for young people in Oxfordshire are under the average that the rest of the country enjoys. That simply should not be happening in this location. Now, what we need to do is to think again and reimagine the role we can play and how business can play in connecting with young people. And we've talked about this under a broad title called the social contract. We will do more thinking on it over the coming weeks and months. We want business to get involved in this process, but fundamentally, we are talking about re-engaging the business community in working and developing a responsive skills system that will help young people in Oxfordshire connect into the opportunities that are being created in Oxfordshire in this global innovation system. We want to reverse the fact that the apprenticeship numbers in Oxfordshire are actually going down, whilst everywhere else it's going up. We are woefully performing on those numbers. We have a limited number of businesses actually offering apprenticeships right now. We are underperforming in terms of work experience opportunities. We need to reverse that and create pathways for young people and connect them into all of this wonderful activity so that they are inspired. Too many young people don't know what's going on at Harwell. Too many people don't know what's happening inside the science park. Not enough people know about the science and technology that we are creating and creating opportunities to length and breadth of this country as well. That is fundamentally wrong, and the social contract is going to look to re-inspire and re-engage businesses into that leadership role. And we encourage all of you to get on board in that over the coming weeks and months as we set out how that will frame as well. And then finally, there is an absolute criticality about making the innovation ecosystem relevant to local communities and to local people. There is a disconnect, we all know it and we should acknowledge it as well, between the brilliance we're talking about and how local people perceive it. It's mainly because they don't know about it. That's one of the fundamental barriers. And we have to double our efforts to communicate what we do, what's going on, and the jobs that are being created here in Oxfordshire that are relevant and are being valued for them. But also what we should be doing is using the technology and using the innovation and using the research and development to deliver solutions for communities here. And we have an opportunity moving forward with the development of 100,000 homes as part of the housing and growth deal with new communities across the county where we can look to integrate the technologies we are creating to deliver new and better public service outcomes in health, in education, in transport and mobility, and also in terms of further developments for jobs and prosperity as well. We have the tools and the technology to do that, and what we should be aspiring to do is connect those back to local people to show them that there is a wonderful benefit and upside to all of the brilliance that sits around them, and so that they are part of it and own it, and also they can feel valued by it as well. And that, again, is something we must double down our efforts on doing more on in the coming weeks and months as well. So, what's left to do? A lot. What we must do is move at pace, and first and foremost, we will be developing that investment prospectus and also the delivery plan that sits behind it. And also, what is absolutely critical as part of that process is to mobilize the leadership and the civic voices of leadership in Oxfordshire to communicate the Oxfordshire ambition and the leadership role we have in the United Kingdom and its future economy. And then also, cheek by jowl, reconnect with our communities and our young people to show that they have a stake in the local industrial strategy and in the future of Oxfordshire, and we must deliver more than anything else. I hope you will work with us on this, and it's an exciting time to be in Oxfordshire. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Passionate stuff, Ahmed. Thank you. And don't forget, there's a chance to ask questions of Ahmed and the team at the end. Next, we're going to focus on why the Oxfordshire Local Industrial Strategy is vital to our business community. To present this part of the event is the founder of Oxford Nanopore Technologies. The company develops technologies for molecular detection and analysis in DNA sequencing, diagnostics and drug development. According to an article in the Sunday Times, the company is considered to be one of Britain's rare unicorns, an unlisted technology firm valued at more than $1 billion US. He was also the subject of another rarity, a headline in the Financial Times that was actually amusing, calling him the Genes Genie. I thought it was very good. It made me chuckle anyway. Please welcome Dr Gordon Sanghera.
Thanks, Howard. That headline still makes me cringe. So there's no Wi-Fi down here, so I can't do this properly. I wasn't sure what to say, so I thought I'd do a tale of two technologies that really speaks to the heart of Oxfordshire's enterprise. I don't know the dates. If anybody's got Wi-Fi, they can tell me. We all know who Alexander Fleming is, yeah? Penicillin, yeah? So he found in that Petri dish that you can use antibiotics to kill bugs. But without Fleming, there was no Florey. And without Florey, there wasn't Chain. And Chain was a German during the Second World War who actually had to use glass urinal things for bedpans. And he grew the bugs that would allow him to extract the penicillin, and we entered the antibiotic era. Now, why is that important? It was actually the US big manufacturers that then took that on. So we missed an opportunity. So, and there are numerous examples of this, where there is this amazing outpouring of brilliance from Oxford and Cambridge and UK academia. In terms of spend, it punches way above its weight, but it never quite makes it into products, into jobs, into the Oxford economy. So I want to fast forward. This is a tale of two technologies today, to 1985. How many people know type 1 diabetics? So a lot, right? In the early 80s, it was very difficult to measure blood glucose at home. In fact, clinicians didn't even think measuring glucose to control type 1 diabetes was even important. In the mid-80s, there was a huge trial in the US that showed clinical outcomes, long-term complications were minimized to zero. In 1988, I was a postdoc at Oxford, I'm giving my age away now. Margaret Thatcher turned up at the chemistry department and told us all to do something useful. By then, Professor Alan Hill in inorganic chemistry had set up a company called Medisense, which transformed the way and the ease of which you could measure blood glucose. And the little credit card, if you've seen anybody with a little strip, it's plugged in, you should all be proud, it came from Oxford. It underpins that $10 billion diabetes care market today. It was, the company was set up in 85. It was sold to Abbott in 96. It today has 850 jobs, okay? But in 2012, 13, 14, a new technology was going to replace it. And because, and I'm proud to be part of that, right, we were able to establish Whitney, blanket manufacturer extraordinaire, right? Whitney as a manufacturing excellence, center of excellence for Abbott. In 2016, they created 200 more jobs. And we actually repatriated technology from California to be manufactured here in the UK. And today there are 800 jobs. And so there is 35 years of innovative manufacturing excellence. So in 2005, I set up Oxford Nanopore with Professor Hagan Bailey. And he'd come back to Oxford to do chemical biology, which underpins the science behind what we do, because he'd met somebody called Dave Norwood, who had met somebody at Medisense, Professor Alan Hill, and lamented about the fact that no revenue was generated for UK PLC. So £20 million went into chemistry. The Department of Chemical Biology was set up. I was fortunate enough to stumble across Hagan Bailey, and we set Nanopore up. And the first thing we did was reverse the optics and go to Harvard, Santa Cruz, California. We went to all the US academics and we repatriated their IP. The second thing I already knew was that I could go and steal a load of ex-Abbott people and former colleagues of mine, most of who probably vowed to never work for me ever again and were glad to see the back of me when I went, to build a factory. So I'm going to tell you what we do in a minute. But before I do, Ahmed just showed Rutherford Appleton Laboratories. Right next to the accelerator is a building, and I kid you not, it looks like that. It's called the MinIron Building, so next time you're down there, drive past it, it actually looks like that. So what do? We access DNA information in real time, in a bioelectronic fashion, so very similar to accessing DNA for type 1 diabetics in real time. And that we are the only company in the world who can access DNA information in real time. Why is that important? Well, you all know about the Internet of Things, right? By 2020, there'll be over 30 billion interconnected devices. What we're able to do is to usher in the Internet of Living Things. What does that even mean? Every single living system has a source code. Whether you think about a virus, about 10,000 base pairs, a microbial bacterial genome, 4 or 5 million, human, 3 billion, wheat, 10 billion, 16 billion, Paris japonica, 50 billion. That source code is underlined by GTAC. If you can access that in real time, you can fundamentally change things. It's a very short amount of time, but in thinking about what examples I would talk about, so this allows you to access DNA information in real time. How do you actually do that? You need a little tube. So I'm going to talk about this in the context of penicillin. So how many people don't use antibiotics because they're worried about drug resistance? It's great, isn't it? You can all be very proud of yourselves, but it's not going to help. For 50 years, 70, 75 years since, and it was Fleming himself who said overuse and overproliferation of antibiotics will lead to drug resistance, okay? And there are some great TED Talks on this. It is asymmetric warfare. We are telling the bugs, by overproliferation of antibiotics, how to combat these drugs. And we are now leaving the antibiotic era. By 2050, there will be more deaths from infections than there will be from anything else, if we do not do something about it. Okay? So in the context of the Internet of Living Things, the access to real-time information, how can this thing help? Well, you can take a tube like this, take a swab, spit into it, do a little bit of a jig, 2 minutes. What that does is it takes the saliva, it'll extract the DNA, it'll fish out the bacteria, leave the human behind, and it'll be plonked on here, very simple little push device. This will plug into a laptop, and it will tell your consultant what microbial infection you have, whether it's drug resistant or not. It's a bit clunky, so actually, talked about being bold, being visionary. How many people have more than one mobile phone at home? Right? The CEO of Bell Labs said nobody needs a goddamn mobile phone because there's one on every street corner in the US of A. Okay? You will all have access to DNA information at home, and you will all run a whole host of things. This is a completely integrated device. You can watch Netflix on this. It's a high-res screen. It's Wi-Fi enabled. Same device. There's a consumable in here. You'll be able to take your baby, temperature. You're really worried, is it something that's going to be very harmful, or is it just flu or virus? And that thing is also important. I mentioned it doesn't help if you don't take antibiotics, because it has been shown in effluent, in Hong Kong and other places around the world, the wastewater is riddled with drug-resistant strains of bugs. So it's in the ecosystem, right? What we eat, what we release, and it goes round and round and round. So this thing will allow us, and we will enter The DNA, we're already in the genomic era, but we're now going to enter the real-time DNA information age. We have 450 people because of Oxford. We have 40 nationalities because of Oxford. We have this amazing infrastructure. I can't talk about technology, I haven't got time. We need state-of-the-art silicon fabrication. We've just built the largest clean room in Europe, coupled to single-cell biology that is world-beating. And we have to fuse the two together. You cannot do that anywhere other than maybe California and Oxford. And I talked about Cambridge and collaboration, but the other lot are good at molecular biology. They have no engineering. And when you fuse all that together, this initiative, and OxLEP, we have to now really back it big time, because there is 30 years of manufacturing excellence, and that underpins this growth and this ability to be able to leapfrog and go from brilliant academic excellence straight through to world-beating global technology companies. I'm proud, I don't know if that's a unicorn tag, right, but I'm proud to be involved with this company and the 450 people who built it. We're bold, we're ambitious, we've refused to sell. We've got a global list of investors because of Oxford. Sovereign wealth funds, Hong Kong funds, US pharmaceutical companies. So what you lot have to do is get out there and sell that vision to everybody, because the next generation will be inspired by the Medisenses and the Nanopores, hopefully. With that, I'll pass back to you. Thanks.
Incredible stuff. Our next key speaker is from Advanced Oxford. Advanced Oxford is a membership organisation for senior leaders from the major knowledge-intensive businesses and organisations in the Oxford region. They're research-led and work to support and inform key stakeholders involved in the development of the local innovation ecosystem, infrastructure and policy. So please welcome Sarah Haywood.
Thank you very much. If you haven't heard of Advanced Oxford before, that's absolutely fine, because we are a relatively new organisation. And what I hope is that over the course of the next weeks, months and years, you will all get to know us well and know who we are and what we are about. Because we're an organisation, a business-led organisation, a membership organisation, working together to grow our innovation ecosystem and economy. We're formed of companies that all have science and technology and innovation at their heart. I'm delighted that Oxford Nanopore, we've heard about, are a member. Abbott, that we've also been hearing about, are a member. And these are the kind of organisations that are coming together because they care about the success of the Oxfordshire region as a place to be based, as a place to innovate, as a place to grow their companies. And innovation runs through the whole of the local innovation strategy that we've been hearing about this morning. We've heard that there are different themes. And what's really interesting for me is that this need to support innovation and the companies, the businesses, the idea generators who are working in our region runs through all of the themes. So whether it's ideas, whether it's people, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's the business environment, all of these things have a part to play in ensuring that the companies that are part of Advanced Oxford can continue to be successful, can continue to grow, and can continue to operate in Oxfordshire. And they want to do that because they're all organisations that have either grown up here or have chosen to locate here. I think that there are some issues for us all that we recognise as being absolutely critical in terms of ensuring that the ambitions that are set out around growth can be achieved. I know from various roles that I've undertaken over the last 25 years that the reason that the companies are here in the UK, not just Oxfordshire, but are in the UK, is because of our ability to generate fantastic ideas. And also because of the talent that we have and the people who actually can take those and run with them. But as we've been hearing from Gordon, that path is not always easy. And we don't always see those people, those ideas driven through to full commercial benefit for the region and for the UK. So there is more that we can do working together to ensure that that happens. Of course, national government holds many of the levers, but there are lots of things that can be done at the regional basis. And that's why I'm really pleased to see some of the ideas, some of the proposals that are coming forward in the local industrial strategy, where Advanced Oxford and all of us here today can help shape these to make sure that they actually deliver for the ecosystem that we want and need. Just on Friday, I was part of a discussion led by OxLEP that was looking at some of the data from the most recent UK Innovation Survey. And this is a survey that's conducted by government that looks at some of the factors that are influencing decision-making, but also the perception of the UK amongst the most innovative companies. And lack of personnel within the Oxfordshire area was one of the most significant issues. So from our perspective as Advanced Oxford, we also share that sense that skills and access to talent is absolutely critical. We've heard about some of our members this morning. I just want to point to another. On Milton Park, there is a company, Ipsen. It's a pharmaceutical company also. We've got quite a life sciences theme going on here. But Ipsen is a specialist pharmaceutical company that is focused on oncology, neuroscience, and rare diseases. And in the last 4 years, the company has grown its UK presence from 500 employees to 720 employees, many of those based at Milton Park in Oxfordshire. This is a French company with a very, very significant presence and research capability also in Boston in the US. So when we talk about global connectivity and the need for greater global connectivity, we already have fantastic exemplars within the business community in Oxfordshire. And what we need to do is we need to tease out and understand what those connections are, how we can leverage them, but also how others can learn from them. Because there's one thing for sure, it's really easy to talk about innovation and to talk about innovation ecosystem. They're nice sound bites. But I've been working in this area for a very long time, also within government policy. And it's really, really tough to work out what the ingredients are. So there's quite a lot of alchemy and there's quite a lot of luck. And we need to also think about those issues as well. We've recently, as Advanced Oxford, conducted a quality of life study. I'm pleased to say that on our really, truly awful website, which if you can manage to get onto the Wi-Fi, you might be able to look at, you will be able to find a link to a summary of the findings as of this week. Bear with us on the awful website. It is soon to change. I should also say, for those of you that are tweeters like myself and are sitting with frustration, banging on your phone, trying to get it to connect, please do revert to the old and trusted technology of pen and paper. Write down our Twitter handle, and if you'd like to follow us, that would be great. But we've recently done a quality of life study, and this has been asking employees within our membership to tell us about the things that they really care about and what are the things that influence their decision to work in Oxfordshire. The vast majority of the people that completed the survey for us are working in Oxford and Oxfordshire because of the specific job and the role that they can take within this region. We heard from Gordon just now about the connectivity between Oxford Nanopore and the company that he used to work for, Abbott. And of course, this is absolutely crucial. We need to see these flows of talent. We need to see these sharing of skills and the movement of opportunity around if we want to retain great people within the region. So that means that people need to understand where the opportunities lie for them and to be able to find those easily and to be able to use all means to be able to do that. We've seen that the things that people value from working in Oxfordshire are those roles, but also other things. They really like working in Oxford and Oxfordshire because of the environment, because of the access to other people that are working in similar roles, and that sense of a community of people working innovation. But of course, there are other things that they don't like, and we've already heard about some of those things this morning, which Ahmed has referred to. Housing, of course, is a difficulty. We've seen the commitment to new housing, and that is essential, and that is something that we as Advanced Oxford will continue to support and push for. We also have frustrations around transport. Many of the people that work for the Advanced Oxford companies travel over 30 minutes and often over an hour to get to work. But sometimes that is, as we all know, a frustration. So there are many things that we can do and we have yet to do to make sure that we can really deliver on the success and the potential that this region has. On behalf of Advanced Oxford, I would like to say that we are committed to working with OxLEP on the strategy, and we look forward to helping you to shape the recommendations and proposals that you have put together and to making the delivery of this strategy something that works for the whole of Oxfordshire. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah. And you're dead right about the phone signal in here. There's an idea for the science bods amongst this concrete that lets 4G in. That would be very useful. Finally, to wrap matters up from today's presentation, as well as to explain why businesses can and should back the Oxfordshire Local Industrial Strategy, please welcome the chair of OxLEP, a graduate of Oxford University, spent his working career leading world-class organisations in both the UK and abroad. He's currently the CEO for Europe of the Hong Kong headquartered International Railway and Property Group MTR Corporation. Please welcome Jeremy Long.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be very quick because I do want to allow a little time for questions. What have you heard this morning? I think you've heard from everyone who's spoken, the passion, I think the realisation of what we are here in Oxfordshire. Howard started out with something about Britain's got talent. This is Oxfordshire's got talent. I'm, as he's already introduced, I have something to do with railways. Those of us that as passengers on the railway hear from time to time the see it, say it, sorted message coming to us. I would say see it, take a look at what there is here in the region, take a good look at what's in the list. I think you've heard the passion with which I think those of us who have been involved in the last 18 months or so have come to see within what we have here. See it, say it. I think the takeout for all of us is to find the way that we can continue to communicate, whether that's communicating to government. We are about continuing to convey the message to government about how investment coming in, sensibly coming in here to the region, can be as catalytic as it really can be to continuing growth. But say it externally, abroad, take every opportunity to promote the opportunity of Oxford and Oxfordshire. Say it locally, as we've heard, get kids to really understand what's on their doorstep when they're wondering what their careers should be. We've only heard again this morning, careers of yesterday are so different from careers that are opening up for tomorrow. That's a heck of an issue amongst the school system, even amongst the university system, to be able to open eyes to the opportunities there will be for jobs into the future. So take every opportunity to say it, to promote it, and above all, do it. Say it, see it, do it. We've all got a part to play in what is a fantastic future for this region. Let me thank Howard, let me thank everyone who's spoken. Let me thank our team, the OxLEP team, not just those this morning, those that have pulled it together behind the scenes. It's a very little organisation, but it's, I think, a very, very effective catalytic organisation. You've heard us talk very strongly this morning about how we talk about working locally, how we talk about working in partnership. It really is about working across a much wider group of people who are involved. Also in the local authorities, in our universities. It's a fantastic way of making things happen on the ground. And thank you all very much indeed for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. So a chance for questions from the floor. If you'd like to introduce yourself as you do it, we've got probably just over 5-10 minutes, something like that. If you want to address it directly to a member of the panel, please do so. And then it's slightly awkward with how the alignment of desks are in here. Perhaps stand up or just spin your chair around and speak to the gathered masses. So who would like to be first in to bat with a question for our panel? Lots to chew over today, I'm sure. Anyone like to pitch in first? There we go, far side. It's a great way to get the step count up.
Hi, my name's Lucy Shaw and I work for the university's Gardens, Libraries and Museums Division. And we have access to over 120,000 school students in Oxfordshire and within an hour's drive of Oxford. And we particularly try to engage with young people and with local population and community who are perhaps disengaged with the university. So my question to speakers today and also business colleagues in the audience is how can you work with us in the cultural sector, not just the university's cultural assets, but also the cultural and heritage assets across the city and the county, because Oxfordshire has some of the best in the land. How can we work in partnership with you to deliver some of this innovation and inspiration to young people? At the moment, we're very good at channeling public engagement with research and working with our research colleagues in Oxford, but we would really like to work with business colleagues too.
It's a great point. Ahmed, would you like to pick up on that?
Hi, Lucy. Two things. First of all, after this wonderful gathering breaks up, please go and meet our skills team, and they will start straight away working with you and how we translate the connections you have into developing meaningful work experience, routeways, and other career options. And secondly, sign up to be part of the social contract work.
Thank you. Another question just behind Gordon there.
Yes, my name is Liz Lethman. I run a business here in Oxfordshire, but I'm also a local councillor, so this might have a little political overtone to it. But I'm very concerned to hear, I think it was Ahmed who said that the talent pool in the county is shrinking. And I think other speakers have also made the point that it may be partly due to the fact that there's a lack of affordable housing, but also the infrastructure. One thing that concerns me greatly is that we hear about money going into infrastructure, but it's very much dependent on housing being built first, whereas we already have a problem. How much appetite do you think there might be from local communities to invest in, for example, infrastructure schemes that might, for example, take some of the cars off the A40? I'm thinking of, sort of light rail, that kind of thing. Do you think there's an appetite here in the county for some kind of partnership to try and make that sort of thing a reality? Because without that kind of investment, I fear that we will never see an improvement to our infrastructure across the county that will satisfy the needs of our businesses.
Perhaps Nigel?
I'll stand up and then it's a bit easier. I think it's a point well made. I think there's already a lot of work going on, which you're probably aware of, around future local transport planning ambitions. So LTP5 in technical terms, local transport plan. Oxfordshire was one of the first to develop what we ended up with was an Oxfordshire infrastructure strategy, and the word infrastructure in that case sometimes belies the quality that's underneath it. So it was looking across the board, not just road and rail infrastructure, but IT, utilities, a whole range of things. So I think Oxfordshire does have an appetite for that. If Ian Hudspeth was stood up here, he'd be talking to you about their ambitions around different modes of transport, using technology to support that. Rail investment's been critically important to us. Park and ride, I know we were one of the first to adopt it, but that journey, that onward journey around mass rapid transit, some of those are areas where the infrastructure investment that we can secure, say the A40 as an example, to improve public transport accessibility gives choice. It isn't always about getting there faster. It's about moving people more effectively. So I think there is an appetite. ALIS flags those as an ongoing requirement. You'll see there's an interrelationship between that and DEFRA's 25-year environment plan, so making sure that the quality of the environment that we then access is improved. Housing, again, Ahmed touched on it. Our local authority colleagues working on the Oxfordshire 2050 plan, planning places for the long term, and planning place, not planning housing development. How do places function? That will help us with moving people more efficiently and effectively. So I think Oxfordshire, the place, and the local authorities have a commitment. We have a commitment with government to continue to work on that. The funding is, or does tend to be led by schemes and projects. The value of our approach collectively has been that those are connected projects. So if you take Garden Town proposal, the Didcot Garden Town proposal, that doesn't sit in isolation from the enterprise zone. It doesn't sit in isolation from the ambitions for Culham. It doesn't sit in isolation from the ambitions for the A34 and the improvements on there. So we're doing a lot more, but it'll never be quick enough. I think we've got to recognise it's a journey, it's not an immediate fix, but there is absolute commitment to work on those issues.
And that was something you picked up on as well, Ahmed, in your presentation about the social contract, which I must admit my ears pricked up at that. So do you want to add a little more flesh to those bones?
This is about showing local people, and especially young people, as Jeremy said, that the opportunities of the future and the careers that they could aspire to have aren't miles away from them, aren't out of their reach. They're actually on their doorsteps. They're actually within their communities that they live in, and that they have every chance as somebody who doesn't live in Oxfordshire of securing those opportunities. And it's using the power of the ecosystem to use that to inspire young people, to inspire parents and families as well to believe that there is opportunities here in Oxfordshire that are open to them. And the components of that are quite simple in many ways. We're looking at building more visibility and pathways into companies opening their doors, to mentoring, to work experience and apprenticeship opportunities, but also to explain and communicate what it is that they do. There are too many kids who don't know what's going on at Harwell. There are too many kids who don't know what's going on at the Science Park. Yes, we have individual companies to do great stuff on their own, but it's not enough. And I think the power of the social contract will be this total overarching ambition to show local people that the Oxfordshire business community believes in them and is willing to invest in them as much as anyone else, and showing the power of the ecosystem in creating jobs and opportunities for local people as well. And that's absolutely part of the message we want to convey.
Some more questions, please.
Can I just quickly come back on what you were asking is about, how we can argue the case better for investment? I mean, I think that's absolutely part of the role that within the LAT, when we talk about working in partnership, there is, if one's honest, asks from every part of the country for infrastructure investment. One could be sitting anywhere in the UK right now, making the case for investment in every area. From a government's point of view, how does it make choices, difficult choices? In our case, the better we come together to argue the merits of any infrastructure, whether it's a tram or anything else, the better we come together, the more compelling the case. In some cases, even with local solutions, even local business solutions. But even if it's not, getting the joined up nature of the arguments, what would benefit the community, how could business benefit from it, how would it create more jobs in due course. The more we join up that, the more compelling our arguments are to government, the more likely we are to see that investment coming in. We've obviously been successful to date, but every stage is a new stage in terms of competitive bidding for additional funds. It's why we welcome the engagement. We absolutely won't always be successful, as Nigel says. You know, we will bid and be unsuccessful. We have to go on making the case. But it's that joined upness that gives us a better chance going forward. And it is about, from government's point of view, what will it see in terms of economic growth, productivity. There has to be a benefit to government to be putting more money in some areas because it needs to see that. We're one of the fortunate areas where we do generate genuine economic wealth. And that's what we need to go on making the case for.
Some more questions before we put a line under this morning's proceedings. We've got the microphone for just down here on the second row. Thank you.
Jane Galsworthy, Oxford Innovation. I really like the ambition of being a global top 3 innovation ecosystem. And I just wondered, I know there's complexities around how you measure this, but where does Oxfordshire sit now? What's the scale of that ambition, and what are the key things that really need to happen to get up there?
Ahmed?
So, thank you for the question, Jane. There are various metrics. They're not one defined set, and that was part of the analysis that we did. But in various things around talent, in terms of commercial capability, in terms of enterprise generation, and also in terms of the wider sort of financial capability, we are good in some cases, but we're not exceeding in all the others. The last recent piece of work that was done back in 2015 had us in the top 10, but we were behind Boston, we were behind parts of the Silicon Valley, we were behind actually some parts of the Far East. So we have the opportunity to make much more headway moving forward. We're probably about 5 or 6 at the moment. What we should be striving for is certainly be in that top 3 and really number 1 if at all possible.
Just before we stop, there's just a short film that the team have put together that I'd like to show you. Well, I hope you felt inspired by what you've heard and seen this morning. A big thank you to our key speakers, of course, to Nigel, Ahmed, Gordon, Sarah and Jeremy. Please speak to the OxLEP team about any other matters arising from today's annual event. And you can find out about our next business Q&A session, which Nigel alluded to earlier, which actually is later this month, and it's at a local gin distillery. And it's not a breakfast meeting either, it's an early evening one. Perfect. Sort the cabs now, okay? It should be a really good night. So thanks for being part of today's event. And there's half an hour or so to enjoy some more conversations, pick up on some of the points today, and another coffee in the Nanopore Forum. So thank you very much. Cheers.